it.
That's the number one advice that I give to young people when I speak to them in college or high school about what they want to be when they grow up is what are you passionate about? What do you wish you were doing rather than sitting here talking to me right now? What would you rather do? And sometimes they'll say, I want to be playing basketball, or I want to be cooking, or different thing. And I say, okay, well then think about a business. You could be very successful doing what you love if you think about it in that way. And you might even change the things that you love. A lot of times kids will give me multiple things. I was teaching a class at a Catholic boys' school here in town, wonderful, like 10th and 11th grade boys, and they had so many ideas, and I'm sure that their parents were saying, well, you've got to do something you can earn a living at, but I thought, well, you can earn a living doing this. You may not be able to be an NBA player, but you could be a sports agent, you could be a lawyer, you could be a commentator, you could be, a writer about sports. There's so many careers that you can, and they kind of look like, oh, I never thought of that, and I think that's, sometimes parents are too close to it. A stranger like me can come in and say, there's a bigger world where you can do exactly what you love and make money at it and be really, really happy. Because if your bank account's full, but your heart is empty, that's not a win-win.
Good morning, St. Louis. I am your host, Marissa Farrell, joined by my husband today.
I am your other host, Lucas Farrell, and we're proudly recording this episode here with my friends at Half Coast Studios. There's a podcast recording studio right here in Creve Coeur. They cut, edit, and distribute the podcast to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, so that you can share it with the world. And then also our great friends over at the Regional Arts Commission for helping fund us, helping us bring this into fruition and share arts, culture, and everything great about St. Louis with you guys. So without further ado, we do have a very special guest. You guys might know her and know some of her footprint across not only St. Louis, but across the entire globe. So we have Absolutely. Maxine Clark in studio today. Thank you so much for taking the time to come see us.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Nice to see you on this bright, shiny Sunday morning.
Yes.
It's amazing.
First morning episode. So
cool. We usually record in the evening, but when we were talking to you gave us some blocks and we're like, let's knock it out in the morning. We're all energized. We got coffee, we're good.
So so Maxine, we're just going to start off for listeners just to hear a little bit about your upbringing, where you grew up, your experiences as a child. And
Thank you. Well, I'm from Miami, Florida. I grew up in the 50s and 60s when all kinds of impossible things were happening. My parents were first generation Americans. Neither of them went to college, but they had really great training. My father learned his trade. He was an electrician in the military. And my mother was a self-trained social worker. She was one of the traveling secretaries for Eleanor Roosevelt, which was a pretty exciting job. And so she was a person who cared about everybody and brought all kinds of people together in the early days of fundraising and charitable events and things like that. My mother was a great doer and convener of people. And so I paid a lot of attention to that, even though I kind of rolled my eyes and said, oh, Mom, do we really have to go? Do we really have to do that? But I was obviously absorbing those things, even though I didn't know it. And we grew up in a middle-class neighborhood. My father was able to buy our home with a GI Bill in Coral Gables, Florida, which is today, multi-million-dollar homes. But he bought our house for $11,500, and it was a 3-bedroom house. And I remember hearing him say that they could have bought it with a patio, a screened-in patio, for another $5,000, but it was too much. When you think about that over a 30-year mortgage, you say, really? That was too much, but it was. And so our neighbors, you never knew what everybody made. People just had different jobs. My next door neighbor was the basketball coach at the University of Miami. We had a neighbor across the street who was a doctor. He was our doctor, Dr. Bob. Mm-hmm. We had a person across the street who was a lawyer. And one of the persons on our street was the developer of the neighborhood. He was a builder. So, we had all kinds of people living in the neighborhood. And people, you would come home from school and you would just put your stuff in the house, and then you'd go out and play. And, your mother would call you for dinner about 5 o'clock or 5:30, and you'd go in. And everybody had dogs, and your dog could run around the neighborhood like a free spirit. And my dog and I would walk up to the corner and wait for my dad to come home, and we'd sit on the stoop that had the street name on it, and we'd wait. Of course, we had to tell him what the real story was, because if I was not being so nice to my sister, my mother was going to tell my dad, but I had to tell him first. And so, and then, we lived in Florida, so it was always warm. And my dad would organize probably once every other week or so a group of kids in our station wagon to go for Dairy Queen. Everybody wanted to go, including the dogs, because they used to give you a little Dairy Queen cup for the dogs. And so,
Pup cup.
yeah.
Or Starbucks does the pup cup.
And, it was just so, just kind of an idyllic life, but you didn't really know what wasn't idyllic. You lived in your world. It was a pretty far-reaching world. I mean, I walked pretty far. My mother would send me up to the grocery store, which was probably about a mile, not that far, but a mile, a walk. Yeah. There are very few parents today that would send their child without adult supervision on a walk for a mile away from their home. Yeah. So that's how the world's changed. But I grew up with that kind of Mr. Rogers neighborhood feeling, and I believe that that's still possible, at least even if it's not in such a big square neighborhood or a round neighborhood, however way your neighborhood is, that you can make it a little wider than probably it is at the moment.
Mm-hmm. That was such a lovely picture in my head. Like,
I know,
just
it seemed like such
up.
just a beautiful. I could just imagine like the movies with like bright trees, and you're in Miami, and it's just weather's
in
nice.
Those days, the trees were actually pretty small because it was they were just building these homes in the 50s after all the men came back from the war and women. And so now when you go there, the trees are like crossing the street. When I go home to visit my friends, the trees are connected across the street. It's like almost like a giant shade. Mm-hmm. And I have pictures of it. I'll look out and you can see the little, young trees just waiting to grow up. But we also had hurricanes. And when something would happen scary in the neighborhood and the electricity went off, which wasn't that rare, it was pretty often in a storm. We would all go out and we would pick up the twigs off the big limbs, and it was kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. But today they're much more violent and much more dangerous. But it felt then that it was just a giant rainstorm. It was scary, but when you went outside and you saw how the rainbows and you saw that you could lift up the trees and put them in the trash pile, it didn't seem so terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. I knew you were from Florida. I didn't know you grew up in Miami though. Mm-hmm. That's cool. You go back there often, not as much.
Not as often as I want, but I used to go back before COVID. I went probably once or twice a year just to see friends, and I don't have any family there anymore. But I do have a lot of friends, and we still. This is a funny story. I went to a large high school. There were 1,200 people in my senior class, which is bigger than most schools in total in St. Louis. And over COVID, one of our friends decided to put together a Zoom reunion. So he sent out an email to we have one of those Facebook pages that lots of people are on, and certain people showed a lot of people showed up, not 1,200, but people showed up, and now we do them every 2 weeks. So no one really lives there anymore.
Yeah.
They live in different parts of Florida or maybe in a suburb of Coral Gables, but we have so many more things in common than we knew as a child. Yeah. And things that we disagree on that we didn't know as a child. Might be politics, might be something else. But the funny thing is we get together every 2 weeks. Most of us come back on the call and talk about, the present, and then things we remember about the past, things that we thought, just like the question you're asking me, what mattered to you? Mm-hmm. What do you think was, who is your favorite teacher? And we invite some of our teachers, and they're still alive, which is really great. They come back and they talk to us. It's really great. And some other graduates from other classes. So it's quite interesting to think, to know where you came from. And these are people who really know who you are because you grew up with them. You went from elementary school, maybe even kindergarten to elementary school to junior high school, which is what we called middle school then, and then high school. And so you didn't move around that much. People weren't as transient as they are today. Mm-hmm. So it's wonderful to reconnect after all that time. Even though we went to reunions, that was once every 5 or 10 years. Yeah. We now see each other every 2 weeks on Zoom. It's pretty fun.
That's is really cool because then you get to talk about even now just how much the world has changed and just
and everybody most people have grandchildren and they talk about that, and it's very interesting, just to see how far we've come, and also how young everyone still is. That's it, because they're active.
Yep.
They're doing things, they're still working, or they're still involved in something really important to them, and with their grandchildren or their children. It's really very, very interesting. I would not have been able to predict any of that. Yeah. So it's nice to know that things don't always work out exactly the way you plan, but they work out better.
For a reason.
Yeah.
Everything is for a reason. We say that all the time. Yeah. For sure.
And the power of technology. I mean, who would have thought that you'd be able to connect with these people? Let's say this was the 90s and you'd already been so far disconnected from everybody in your past. And then Facebook comes around and you get invited to this group, and now you guys are boom. There's really good benefits to social. And I know you're on social media and you like it, and we've seen the power of building a strong community of people in St. Louis. We really just focus on people that love St. Louis, and we highlight the people, places, and events. It's very simple. And we found this over 100,000 people that really love St. Louis too,
There's more than that.
Yeah.
We have to just spread the word.
We have to. And we're just really doing work on Instagram, but there's other avenues that we really need to work in, but it's just so much time and energy that goes into it. That one platform's good enough for right now, but we're working on it. So
I want to shift into education and your experience, because you grew up in Miami and now you're here in St. Louis. And so just tell us about like college. And I know education is very important to you, as it is for me. So
yeah, I had a great education growing up in Miami. Public school. I was always a public school student from elementary school to high school. We didn't have to go to kindergarten when I was a child. And in some places you still don't have to go to kindergarten, but I loved kindergarten. I did go, and I loved it. And I wanted to go to college, but I didn't really know why. I knew I wanted to be a civil rights attorney. I just grew up in that time when that was just really in the news and on, I thought I could do that. That would, because I really cared about people. That was the part of my mother that came through to me loud and clear. But I had to go first to college, and I went to first. Well, I should tell you this teacher story, because my favorite teacher, I had a lot of great teachers. I loved school. It was Mrs. Adams, my high school journalism teacher. And she was fantastic. She was very avant-garde. She wanted you to be creative, and every editor of the newspaper could reinvent the newspaper, which was a big task. And I was the editor of my high school newspaper. And in those days, your teacher they would lend you their car to go sell advertising. I know that would never happen today.
Wow.
So one time I was bringing her the keys back of her car into the teacher's lounge, and the door was open, so I just was leaning him into the counter. But then I heard them talking about their pay, and they were talking about how it was that they didn't make as much money as the janitors in the school. And I thought, well, that's really odd, because these are my teachers, and they're really smart, and how could they went to college and they have all this education. And so I went home and told my mother, and my mother said, well, why don't you ask your teacher about it? Maybe you heard wrong. So I went in the next day and I asked her, and she said, yes, that's true. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, why don't you do some research about it? You're the editor of the newspaper. And I went and did research. My mother really helped me. She took me where I had to go to the library and to the newspaper and all that. And I wrote an editorial about this in the school paper. And of course, I did not think that the janitors should make less money. I just thought the teachers should make more. And then, of course, the next day my locker was kind of broken into, and there was spray paint on it. That was the janitors. But the teachers were all really happy. And that's what I was a senior in high school, so I wanted the teachers to be supportive of me. And my journalism teacher, Mrs. Adams, submitted the editorial unbeknownst to me. They didn't have to ask you their permission in those days, to the Columbia Scholastic Press Association, and I got a scholarship to college. So I was able to go, instead of where I might have had to start at the community college, because my parents really couldn't afford for me to go to a 4-year college, or so they thought. I don't think, because they didn't go to college, I don't think they knew, because quite frankly, it was very reasonable in those days. So, or at least it appears in retrospect to be reasonable, but it was a good value. Yeah. And I went to college at the University of Florida, and I wanted to take courses in the business school, but they wouldn't let women in the business school. It was really hard. Maybe they had 1 or 2. So one of my professors said he was transferring to the University of Georgia, and that he knew that they had women in the business classes. And so I transferred to the University of Georgia, and I loved it. I had a great education there. Learned a lot about racism and other challenges that I didn't, even though they were probably there at the University of Florida, because I went there with all my friends. We sort of just moved up north to Florida. I didn't really see it as much, because my friends were very open-minded, and I had a lot of friends of different backgrounds. But in Georgia, it was really interesting. But I had great teachers, and I got a great education. And I moved to Washington, D.C., where I got a job working in the retail business, because I had to earn the money to go to law school. And that was a really great experience, because I was in the right place at the right time. And I was able to take advantage of that opportunity also, because my boss got sick and they needed me to fill in. So I took a leave of absence from law school so I could, do that. I'm still on that leave of absence today because I loved what I was doing. And I think so many of us, young people, young children, in middle school, high school, we don't know what we want to be. We aren't exposed, less now than maybe when I was even a child, because you could walk around more and you're in the neighborhood. But they don't know what jobs and opportunities there are. I mean, you could be an artist and think, the old-fashioned way of somebody says, well, you can't make any money being an artist, but you can. Yeah. Working in an ad agency, being a web designer, being in communications. Maybe you're not going to write the great American novel, but you can help people with communications. And how many people need that help? It's a lot. And all these new platforms for people to be communicating with. Think about how you use your talents for that. So we don't expose, in my opinion, that's the biggest opportunity America has, is to expose our young people as soon as possible to as many opportunities as possible. Bring into the classroom real live work, people who work, and who can tell them what an accountant does and what does a lawyer do and what does a nurse do, and come to the classroom, and even using technology like Zoom.
Yes.
Just to say that you can't use Zoom to do it, but I think the real person is really important. Almost so they could come up and touch, and see that you are a real person and you are a real nurse or you're a real doctor, a real attorney. So I think there's so many opportunities that we can, the education and your experiences can bring you that get you to where you are today. And it doesn't mean that's where you have to stay. There's so many other opportunities. And I think I've actually evolved quite a bit from where I thought I was going to go, even though I still do civil rights work, but not necessarily in the same way I might have thought. I still get to do all those kinds of things and a lot more too.
So what did you see, so you grew up, you said 60s, 50s, areas, what, you said your mom was, really socially active. And so what did you see, as far as, the type of racism, was Florida, there was obviously the South, so, but you were
Well, Florida was a little different
first.
because we had a lot of Latin American influence. And so there were always people coming, especially when the Cuban refugees came to Miami, that were different, that looked different, that sounded different, that spoke a different language. And we had to adapt. Nobody asked permission. Oh, will you please adapt? You just did. And you're children. And you aren't born a racist. Somebody teaches you to be a racist.
Exactly.
And so we weren't born that way. And the more people we were exposed to that didn't look like us or didn't speak our language, the better off you are. And you get to know, they become your friends, and especially as a child. And I think that's one of the most important aspects of my public education, was that I was exposed to people that were very different from me, lived totally across town or across the street. And we all got to know each other, and you get to accept each other's differences, your height, your weight, your size, you're female, you're male. It didn't really matter. You play a musical instrument, you're an athlete, you're an artist, all these people are in your class, and you go to school with them for basically 12 years. You get to know them, and you get to accept each other in a way that you might not in today's, when you go to work in a new place and you meet new people, and you may only be there for a few years. It's not the same connectivity. So I think if we look back to the way we were raised, even though I was raised before Mr. Rogers, I always think about Mr. Rogers and the way he viewed the neighborhood. And that's my neighborhood. That's how I think about it, is how big can it be, not how small can it be. How many people can I meet and touch and speak to and learn from that can add value, even in this part of my life, which is much older than I was way back then. But there's always time to learn and to share.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's inspiring. It's just it's really cool that you still are so active with, just like you said, if somebody calls you, if a kid wants to interview, you're just you're just trying to be there, and you don't have to. You could be off just doing whatever you want right now.
I do have to, though. For me, it's me, so I have to I want to fit it into the day, because number one, I always learn something. And number two, I remember when I wrote a letter to my senator or to a business person and got an answer. It was like it was a movie star. You thought, oh my gosh, they wrote me back. That means a lot. And so I can remember that, and that's what I want other people to feel. Not so much that it's me, but that somebody heard them, and that we did get it back. I get these little, sometimes I get a letter that says, I collect business cards. Would you send me one of your business cards? How hard is it for me to put a business card into an envelope? How hard is that?
Right.
Cool.
So why don't people do that when somebody sends it to them? Yeah. Kids are trying to, they're expanding their horizons. They're looking at different jobs. I think all that's possible. Teachers do these kind of really creative projects, the flat Stanleys, all those kinds of things that I think are so clever.
Yeah. I love that project. That's so cute. So it just seems like philanthropy work was always, that's just what your calling is. That's what was meant, just from your upbringing and what your parents taught you, and then just, wanting to be a civil rights lawyer, and now what you're doing. So would you say that, that was always end game for you?
I think so, but I'm not sure I knew how I was going to get there. I don't know that it was ever anything I really thought about, okay, you have to do this in order to be a good person who cares about the rights of all people. It's just sort of part of your life, and you just go through life and you do what you were raised to, that's the right thing to do. So I wasn't always conscious of it. And actually, I was more conscious of it when I moved to St. Louis, because I saw that it was not as integrated as I thought it should be. It was a lot more, and people talked about that it wasn't integrated. They talked about segregation. They talked about school districts, and they talked about these things that we never talked about. Miami and Dade in Florida, school districts are very large, one per county, and so you were interspersed with tons of people. When you said you went to school in Dade County, you went to school with a ton of different people, and so I was really sort of surprised, and I started to be more conscious of it than when I moved here than I was growing up.
Okay.
So kind of like to being conscious of it, when you moved to St. Louis, and did you immediately fall in love with it, or was it like a love?
When did you come to St. Louis?
1976, I moved to St. Louis, and I did fall in love with it because I love history.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I saw around me were all these historic buildings, beautiful buildings. I worked in the Railway Exchange building.
Mm-hmm.
I love the history because a lot of buildings in St. Louis, and maybe everywhere, but Miami was a relatively new city in comparison. They have little plaques that tell you when the building was built and, something about what was standing there before.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. I love looking at old pictures and, seeing that. And that part to me was, why are people not liking St. Louis? Look at all the great things they have here, beautiful parks and mansions that maybe weren't mansions anymore. When I moved to St. Louis, I was looking, somebody showed me a house on Portland Place, which is in the Central West End, that they sell for millions of dollars. They were $45,000 because it was going through a transition. And I could afford to buy the house, but I couldn't afford to pay the electric bill or fix it up or do anything with it.
Big home.
And yeah, they're huge. And I think now how that would have been I should have just bought it and sat on it, but I didn't have that much money. But I bought a house in Lafayette Square, and I enjoyed living there, and I enjoyed studying the people that lived there. I had a whole history of the people that lived there before, and I was sort of a romantic kind of story. And I thought, well, maybe someday I'll write a book about these people. I'll do more research. I haven't done that yet, but I loved it. I thought that there was so much to offer, and most people from St. Louis were telling me, "Why do you live in the city?" or "Why'd you move here?" Really weird. Mm-hmm. And I think that my love for it has grown. I see the positives and the negatives, but I think the opportunities here are endless.
Yeah, and we're seeing that in real time right now. And like you said, every city has their issues, but it takes people like you and the amazing people we have on the show that are doing work like you. This kind of reminds me of the conversation we had with Tamara from Clementine. She's a transplant. She moved here. She had a good job, and she moved to Lafayette Square. And this. But she was like, her friends were showing her houses in Chesterfield in the county, and she's like, well, this doesn't inspire me.
Yeah, she came to Lafayette, and she's like, oh, this is where I want to be.
Yeah,
this is St. Louis.
Yeah. Nobody showed me houses in Chester that far out, but Creve Coeur, which seemed far out to me. I was working downtown, and there was a lot of traffic to get downtown. I thought, why not live 5 minutes from downtown if that's where I work? So I think that, and when she and I met, we talked about that too. Both coming from sunny, warm climates, and then coming to St. Louis. People think, why did you leave Florida, or why did you leave California?
You want
but
snow?
Sometimes you don't have a choice. Somebody says, "Here's a promotion for you," and I had no reason not to move here. It was a great opportunity, but I did not know that I was going to stay so long. So that turned out to be a pleasant, surprise.
So you talked about your experience in the retail industry, and then we know that Build-A-Bear came out of that in 1996. Okay. So what inspired you to start Build-A-Bear?
Yeah. Well, actually, you're right. Our first store opened in October of 1997, but I started on the idea in 1996.
The business plan.
Yeah. A lot of things inspired it, mostly going back to when I was a child. And my mother and my sister and I would get on the bus and we would go downtown shopping, but we didn't have any real money. We would just window shop. My mother used to make all of our clothes. She was very talented. So she would look at the styles in the window, and she would actually sketch some things. And if there was a pattern that was similar, she would buy the pattern, which I remember the patterns. Cool. I still have some of my mother's patterns. They're like 5 cents, like simplicity pattern. You might not be aware of those, Lucas, but there were things like that. And so it was always sort of like a field trip. You would go and you would see, and you would be amazed at what you saw. So that's kind of when I took my 2 next door neighbors, Katie and Jack. I picked them up after school one day, and we went looking for Beanie Babies because that was popular then. And when we couldn't find the one that Katie wanted, she just said in the store that day, she said, these are so easy, we could make these. And I heard one thing, and she was thinking another. She was thinking about going home and doing a craft project in my basement because I had a big craft room, and they loved to come over and do that. And I saw in my head this Willy Wonka moment of what this could be, because I loved field trips when we were going to the dairy or the bakery or to the Crandon Park Zoo. It didn't matter to me. It was like a trip, and it was fanciful, and you learned so much on a experiential trip. So what if we could make a Build-A-Bear, a Disney experience in the mall right in your neighborhood? And so I went to work on that project right there and then. And she said to me a few weeks later, she said, well, that's not what I meant. I said, I know what you meant, but you inspired me to think about, something even bigger than that. And we had a lot of fun, brainstorming. And actually children, Katie and her brother and others, my friends' children, were our first board of directors. They had a lot of input into the idea.
Oh, that's so
cute.
Sweet.
I love that. And just getting inspired, because you can get inspired by a trip to the grocery store, like you said, a trip to the farmer's market. So it's really just important to stay open to those ideas. And that's awesome that, so that was 1996. And then you were in St. Louis for 21 years. So I kind of want to go. So
No, I wasn't. I worked for the May Company for 21 years.
Okay.
I wasn't always in St. Louis. I moved in, 20 years. Yeah, I guess I came here in 76, so that's 96. Yeah. But for a while, I lived in Topeka, Kansas, because I was the president of Payless Shoe Source. So May Company moved me. They owned Payless, and they moved me there in 1992. In 1996, so I moved back home to St. Louis to start something on my own, but I didn't know what it was. Yeah. And that's where the idea came from, because I was really open-minded. I just came back to be me and to kind of get my kid think back. And get out of corporate America. And it was pretty fast, actually, with going out with them to, really just be a kid again. And we had a lot of fun. So I would say that's what I always advise people is don't give up your kid think. And sometimes you have to, because you're an adult and you're working and you're doing all these other things, and you forget that those field trips were really fun, or that teacher said X, Y, and Z. And you forget to even say thank you to your teachers, which I always tell everyone to please do if you can still be in touch with your teacher. So much easier now to do that. Yeah. But anyway, you just forget, and you have to be reminded that, when you're a child, you're your most open-minded. And as parents of children, I encourage my friends also to not fill their brain with all these amazing opportunities and ideas, not just what you think or what your father thinks, or, what somebody else in the family thinks. Broaden their horizons.
I was like, we need to write thank you notes to teachers who we, are thankful for and appreciative of what they're doing for us. So
no, you turned it into a teachable moment.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really what the opportunity is. Instead of us saying, oh no, we can't teach that or talk about that or do that, how do we turn it into a positive learning experience for everyone? And people can understand better why people don't feel good about what was said, or why people even said it, and where they come from. As I said, you're not born a racist. Sometimes you just learn these things. And how do you unlearn them? Right. Because you get to know people that you say, I know that kids don't think like this. They go to school with so many people that don't look like them, taller, shorter, thinner, different skin tones, and they just love each other. And how do we just keep that love going? It's that's the part that is the most wonderful for our future, thinking about how the world could be if kids just, you see these pictures on social media a lot of times, kids hugging each other and walking hand in hand like you did when you were a little girl. You held your friend's hand. Now that would somebody go, oh, what are you doing that? But those are the things that I think endear us to each other as human beings. And we have to be reminded sometimes that that's what we did when we were children. What happened? Why did we forget to still be that huggable, loving, not afraid to say, I love you, mommy, or I love you, sister, or I love you to a friend. Right. I hear that all the time. And I think kids are, our store, kids are always talking about love and hugs. And oh my gosh, that's such a privilege to listen to them when they're happy and having fun and what they think about and who they want to make a bear for. Because they'll get in there and they'll make, I want to make this one for Grandma. I want to make this one for Aunt Susie. I want to make this one for Uncle Bob. They have so many ideas of giving and sharing. And I think that part, realizing that's an expensive proposition, but the idea of it, how do you take that idea and say, okay, well, we'll go home and draw them a picture of a bear that you saw, and I've said to kids in the store, if I'm there, take a picture and send them that picture, and you'll come back maybe in the future and they'll make it with you. I know the parents aren't going to sit there and make that 4 bears that day, time or money. But how do you make it so that the parents are off the hook and it still is a teachable moment? It's a loving moment that they can still share. So you're the kind of teacher that I had, and in a much different time period. And I think that is, I'm hoping that that it's the teachers that will bring us back to our sensibility in this world.
We're trying.
A lot of weight on them shoulders.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes. But they've got the heart.
That's why I was going to say that's why we're doing it. That's what I'm passionate about, and everyone I work with, I can see the same. And my department I work very closely with, and we all share the same passion for. That's why we're doing this. So if you don't have a passion for it, you're not going to make it.
That's the number one advice that I give to young people. when I speak to them in college or high school about what they want to be when they grow up is what are you passionate about? What do you wish you were doing rather than sitting here talking to me right now? What would you rather do? And when sometimes they'll say, oh, I want to be playing basketball, or I want to be cooking, or so different thing. And I say, okay, well then think about a business. You could be very successful doing what you love if you think about it in that way. And you might even change the things that you love. A lot of times kids will give me multiple things. I was teaching a class at a Catholic boys' school here in town. Wonderful, like 10th and 11th grade boys, and they had so many ideas. And I'm sure that their parents were saying, "Well, you've got to do something you can earn a living at," But I thought, well, you can earn a living doing this. You may not be able to be an NBA player, but you could be a sports agent. You could be a lawyer. You could be a commentator. You could be, a writer about sports. There's so many careers that you could. And they kind of look like, oh, I never thought of that, And I think that's sometimes parents are too close to it. A stranger like me can come in and say, there's a bigger world where you can do exactly what you love and make money at it and be really, really happy. Because if your bank account's full but your heart is empty, that's not a win-win. It's much better to make less money and have a joyous heart, and you will eventually make more.
Yeah. Yes. That's a good quote. I love that.
We say this, to be fully successful, again, business aside, you have to, again, have a full heart and love what you're doing as well. Yeah. So
we talk about that too. We both come home and we're pretty happy with what we do, and we don't ever complain.
I always say it's funny, at the end of the day, we're almost fighting to share the best parts of it. It's not we're complaining. It's oh, let me get a word in about this. This happened.
She's you didn't ask me yet. You didn't ask me yet how my day was. And I'm well, I was just telling you about my day. I wasn't done yet.
Yeah. No, the good news is you have a lot of things to share that are positive.
Yeah.
And write them down. As a teacher, I know you write a lot of stuff down, but I think those are the kinds of things too. One of the things that I did with a class once was, those black and white composition books that you have. So we said, this was fifth graders, 10-year-olds. Mm-hmm. In the very front, you put a baby picture and you put what day you were born and where you were born, a little story. We'll go back to that later. In the very back of the book, in the middle of the book, you put what you want to be, what you think you want to be when you grow up right now. What do you want to be at 10 years old? What do you think you want to be? And then the very last page, which would be a tombstone, but I don't talk about death. What do you want people to remember about you when you're not here on this earth anymore? What would you want your friends that you grew up with to remember about you? And they put there kind, usually really positive things. A couple times I saw some things that were worrisome that I would want to tell a parent, but but for the most part, they're very optimistic. Children are always much more optimistic, and so they write in. And then I said, "This is your journal, and now you can start to keep from you can go backwards and what you can remember about when you were 3 or 4 if you want to put that in there, but start from now where you are, and then keep going and." Pick it up, and because I did that, and I can look back on my journal that I created in a notebook, and read something from whatever August 5th of 1960, and it's awesome. Not that different.
Yeah,
you're younger, and you're asking different questions, but they're kind of the same. And I'm always sort of amazed by that. It never ceases to amaze me what I was thinking about that had to do with something that I'm thinking about today. But I've gathered the experience through the years of how to deal with it differently. It's not as much a question now as it would have been then, but it still is something that's in my world, and I have to deal with it.
Yeah, but that is interesting, because I would love to feel those days that we're good, and look back and be what did I do that day that's different than this
And in
day?
a way, you are doing that with your show. That you can go back and listen. See, we have so many tools now. You don't have to just write it down, but I think writing is a good habit to get into. But you can actually speak to your phone and
voice memos.
Record it and have it on record. And I think that's a good thing too, that I try to save, I mark all the podcasts I listen to that really have words of wisdom in them that I want to keep. I don't know if I'll ever go back and listen to all of them, but the idea is that you don't have to write everything down anymore. You can save it by sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is going to be one people are going to mark down. They're going to save this episode.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Download it.
While we're on the topic just of education in general, I know education reform is very important to you. So how are you putting those methods into practice? What?
Well, I try to support teachers as much as I can. Teachers are my heroes, so you are my hero.
Thank you.
And I really think that teachers should be paid 10 times what they make now, but that's not always what's so important to them, but they should be compensated when you think about how much education you have to have, how much common sense you have to have, how much sense of self, and, teaching this to children you have to have. It's probably one of the hardest jobs in the world, if not the hardest job. So for me, teachers are my heroes. And I've discovered along the years of being able to be a charitable and philanthropic person, different things that help teachers. I don't have to always do it. I can, do it through others. So I discovered it was given to me as a business idea. I got it from Crate and Barrel, a Christmas card that said, "Thank you for being our customer, and here's a $25 gift card to Donors Choose. Please go online and give it to any teacher." And I didn't even know what Donors Choose was. And I went online, and of course, it was habitual. I couldn't just give $25. I found a teacher in Coral Gables. I found a teacher in St. Louis. I found a teacher in Athens, Georgia, and I gave to their projects. And I discovered this, and I had to spread the word, because you hear about how much teachers use their own money to support their classes.
Right.
And there's so many other opportunities and so much technology that you can get for your students that it technically will belong to the school, but it's the teacher that writes the request, and then you send it out by social media to your friends and family, and then new friends, and it gets shared, and it's like viral. So that project gets funded by people you don't even know, which gives them a sense of accomplishment, but also that product gets there to the children, so they don't have to wait till the end of the year when the teacher can finally afford that overhead projector, then to get it right away, whatever it is. And they're really interesting. The other thing I love about it is I'm reading all these interesting things that teachers do, which makes me love them even more. So also supporting organizations like Teach for America, which was attracting college students who didn't necessarily think about being teachers, that were science, business majors, accounting majors, and they come into the classroom at least for 2 years. And in St. Louis, 60% of our teachers are still in education since 2002. That's a lot, because the average time a person stays in teaching is about 5 years. So Teach for America is no different than any other teacher, and that you need human skills as much as you need that knowledge of classroom behavior. Yeah. I mean, you can learn the content. That if you're a math person, you're a math person. But how do you teach it? That may need some skill. But if you're watching an experienced teacher, you can learn that pretty fast. And our teachers, they got out to schools and they met teachers, and they were students. They got to be connected to their family. They introduced me to their children. So there's so many ways that teachers are such a critical part of our life, and asking their opinion. Like I'm on a commission for evaluating teacher pay, which the governor believes is not high enough, and wants really input from business and community leaders to help make that decision. And I hope that they'll substantially increase it, because we have a long way to catch up. But I think that we have to attract more people. That's the other challenge, is if you're really good in math, you could go be an accountant and make a lot more than being a math teacher. And we need math teachers. Who's going to teach the next generation of doctors, accountants, lawyers, scientists?
That's a good point.
We are the foundation, truly, of the success of the country. I mean,
right, and of democracy. And if we aren't really realizing that, how valuable our teachers are, and encouraging more people to even give it a few years. Because Mrs. Adams, who I was telling you about, who was my journalism teacher when I was reconnected with her, when we opened a Build-A-Bear store in her neighborhood, funny story, but I just asked her how old she was. I thought in my head that she was like maybe 15 years older than me. She was only like 6 years older, and it was only her second year of teaching that she had inspired me. And so it's not like necessarily years and years of experience. It's a love and connection with your students and the subject matter that you teach, and that's the passion that comes with it. What are you teaching, and what are you passionate about? And what are you working at? Are you doing what you're passionate about? Whether you're a photographer, a radio announcer, a graphic artist, athlete, do what you love, and then you'll do it well. If you're doing something that you don't like, then it'll be treacherous.
Yeah, you don't put in the work. Yeah. Well, and like you were saying, like the average teacher leaves after 5 years. Like when we went on our honeymoon, we did a hibachi bar and happened to be at a table, and like everyone was a teacher.
Oh, wow.
But they were all saying that, yeah, I did it for 3 years. I did it for 2 years, and I quit. And I'm like, what's going on?
Especially lately. As of late, teachers have been going through a lot more stress because of the virtual learning and all the other challenges that come with that.
And all the politics that get into it that never was really there before. Teachers taught, and parents, unless your child was having some difficulty, you just let the teacher do their job. And I think it's a challenge today. I really feel even more strongly that teachers are our heroes, and we have to let them teach, and we have to learn about the past as well, so we can forge a better future. Yeah. So we'll see how that all goes. But I think there's many, many more people that are cheering teachers on. Oh, yeah. But you hear the loud, naysayers sometimes louder.
At the school board meetings or whatever goes on. Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that, because whenever we met you a couple weeks ago, you were the very first person ever to just say thank you for being a teacher. And that was like we left and I was like, no one has ever.
Oh, I
said that to me.
I would not be here sitting across from you today if it wasn't for my teachers. All of them. I can name every single one.
Yeah.
Through high school, at least. Some of my college professors, I don't remember all of their names, but the ones that mattered to me, the ones that really put something engraved it in my heart and my brain at the same time. I remember them and I thank them all the time.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
It matters. You might think they don't hear you, but they're hearing you.
Yeah.
And it's not only like the content that she teaches, but like her personality when she, like these students will come and tell her stuff that they wouldn't tell her parents. Some of these kids like just are very open with you. And
I talked to my teacher way more than I did my parents, especially in high school. So you're teaching younger kids, but they will, they have a feel, they feel like you're on with them.
Mm-hmm.
And they have especially if you relate to them that way. I mean, it's an amazing responsibility. That's why it's worth a lot more money than they pay you. But I know you're doing it because you love it. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. And those students that may not say it now, 10 years from now, they'll remember.
Back. Yeah. It will come back.
They'll see you in the grocery store and they'll say, oh, you were my teacher. And they'll hug you and you'll be so happy.
Because even I have those moments and I'm like, oh, I see what they were trying to teach me then. You know, as a high school student, you don't know. But so in 2013 is when you stepped down as CEO, right? As what
Chief Executive Bear.
Chief Executive Bear. Very cute.
Love that.
So what prepared you for like taking that step?
Well, when I started Build-A-Bear, I was 48 years old, so I wasn't a spring chicken. And like a lot of young entrepreneurs are, in their 20s, they have a longer time. I knew that I had to prepare. I was going to create a great company, and I had to prepare this company to go on long after I wasn't there, because that's what you're supposed to do. The best thing that a founder can do for a company is obviously create the company, but the second best thing is pass it on to the right successor. And so that was important to me. And we had a couple of people in our company that I thought could do that, but different circumstances came about and there wasn't anybody in-house that could do that. So we had to find a different person because I had other things I wanted to do on this path that, to sort of a little bit more becoming my mother's daughter, on that way. But Build-A-Bear had helped my husband and my husband's business be very successful. And it was a business based on children. And so we wanted to give back to the children of St. Louis first and foremost, other children as well, but mostly the children of St. Louis. So we had to get going on that. And people thought, oh, you'll never leave. You'll never be able to do it. But I was able to do it. And I was really working on our KIPP school that we were opening up, our second KIPP, our first elementary school in the West End. And I took a trip, I turned right instead of left going home, and I saw this building that was going on to be for sale. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? This big old building, what can they do with it? We just opened the school, and it's hard in the city of St. Louis when something becomes decrepit. What do you do with it? And I had this idea that we could turn it into kind of a Cortex-like process for nonprofits. That Cortex has meant for-profit businesses in life sciences and technology, and nonprofits are sort of fueling our economy in a lot of ways and helping people, especially in the safety net of St. Louis. There's way too many, in my opinion, but could we bring a certain percentage of them together to work and solve problems? And so I had this vision, that another Willy Wonka moment of this building that was, I had no idea even how big it was when I saw it, but it could be that. Not only could it be offices for nonprofits, but could it be apartments for teachers, nurses, social workers, public health, public safety, those young people that start out with this great big idealistic view of life, and they could live affordably in a great place with other like-minded people and also have the benefits of a gym and a pool and all the amenities they have to build, but also know that what they're doing, they aren't the only ones doing it, and that there's lots of people to do it. And I think that is a guiding principle, and we've been able to accomplish that. The Delmar DivINe, this was on Delmar, which was this street that everybody told me to be afraid of going north of, and I thought, why? I mean, it's like a beautiful street, and actually some of the most beautiful buildings and homes are north of Delmar, but had become sort of that stigma in St. Louis, and I wanted to change that. And this building was big enough that we could change it, because it was the former St. Luke's Hospital. It was a place of caring for over 100 years, and it could still be a place of caring, but in a 21st century way. So I saw that in my head, that, kind of Disney-esque and Willy Wonka moment, and, just do it, it's not easy. And if I knew then what I know now, I might not have done it. So you don't have to have every single thing figured out when you take on a project or a challenge. You just have to move forward. and keep getting information and more information. And maybe there's something that might be such a big obstacle that you can't do it. But one of the advantages of me doing this at this time in my life is I had the financial wherewithal to push at least the first stage of it through, to do the research, to get the architectural plans. I could bring enough people to the table, people that I'd known that would do a little bit for nothing, help me here and there, so that at least we could get the vision to paper.
Right.
And somebody else could see it, what I saw in my head. And it took us, we bought that property in 2015, and, we just now finished it, or finishing it. We had I think it was after you came, we had a flood. And so you saw it, I think you saw it, I forget what day you actually visited me, but right after that we had the flood, and we had to tear out the entire first floor. Water just came in the city of St. Louis. It was just,
sorry.
And we're not in a floodplain or anything. It just, it was like one of those crazy days. But it was a hospital. It's a place for caring. The ghosts in the building are very, very optimistic, and they want us to be there, and they're help. We're going to get it fixed. So it's just money. But it's the will of the people will prevail, and we will get it all fixed, and back to open up for the public again. Our people are still living there. People moving in the apartments. People working there, but we can't bring in a lot of other third parties to the space yet because it's
you just want to
being renovated again.
Oh man. Yeah, it's gonna.
Mother Nature has a funny way of telling you to
she hit
slow
us
down.
hard, didn't she? She really did. Yeah, the Delmar DivINe is going to be a great way just to tie in the community and bring, like you said, all the nonprofits together to maybe have opportunities to work together and help each other out. So
creating your neighborhood again.
Yeah,
you're creating your neighborhood.
Yes, it's a neighborhood actually within a neighborhood, because about 1,000 people will be coming and going between the offices and the apartments every day. One thing that I wanted to do, but I didn't know that it would happen this fast, was when people started talking about the divide, the Delmar divide. I really just, it was a play on the word divide. I just changed the D to an N and became DivINE, but it's an I-N, capital I, capital N, for investment, innovation, and inclusion. And I really did want that to help us change the way the branding of the neighborhood. And actually I've been at several panel discussions where people are talking about St. Louis and the future of St. Louis, and they don't talk about the divide. They say, and when you look at the Delmar DivINe, you can see that this is, so, in a way, even though I only had that as a working name, it wasn't my planned name forever. The neighbors did encourage me to use it, to keep it. But I just, it was just a working name just to get rid of that D. Why are we talking about divide? In fact, we want to be indivisible. We want to be the part that says this neighborhood is so strong, nothing is going to stop it.
And people are now using that word because it's just planting. It's big. It's across the building. And now it's just
how amazing to hear that.
Yeah, it's
divine.
And they kept it is divine. Thank you. People refer to it, talk about it a lot, and I'm proud of that. And I know we have a lot of work to still do to make it real and make it lasting. But I know how to do that. I mean, I think it's a part of the culture that you build into the system. And Build-A-Bear had a big culture and a wonderful culture, and it still does, because it's continued by the CEO there now, and also by all the people that work there, that were there when I was there, and new people that have come. They come because of the culture. And we also are bringing children who used to shop at Build-A-Bear to be our workers now, because we're 25. This is our 25th anniversary. Yes. Kids grew up with Build-A-Bear, and they're bringing their children to Build-A-Bear, which is a wonderful thing. And the same thing is possible with other businesses and structures if you think about it with a heart. That's the main thing. And Build-A-Bear, literally, we put a heart inside of a bear, a stuffed animal. They never had hearts before. But in this, we're putting the heart back into the community. This community had heart. It's a wonderful community. I just get to work in it. But we're making that heart even bigger, and other people to notice it as well, not just me.
And it spreads because now other people are investing in there. Some of those houses are getting, I think we drove from downtown, past Fresh Time, and just kept
Delmar.
going. Yeah, so we came down that way, and you're looking, and then you start to see, okay, here's some more stuff going on. And that all starts with you taking that risk.
Lots of other people along the street. There are other neighbors of mine that are working on developments from us all the way east to downtown, which is so encouraging, because it isn't just me. I get a lot of credit because everybody knows Build-A-Bear, but there's so many other people that have been working at it longer, and I'm glad to be able to bring some starlight and spotlight to it. Yeah. But it's not about me. It's really about them. They inspired me to do this project, and the more the merrier is how they put it. Let's all go do this together. And actually, a team of our neighbors that we call it the Delmar Main Street Project. A team of our neighbors, and it goes from Skinker to Taylor all the way on Delmar. they're in Kansas City at a conference, and they just won a huge award last night for some creativity that they have on a project and their great presentation for our neighborhood.
Wow.
And we're very excited about that. They're unbelievable people. They really live there every day, not just work there. They live there every day, and they allow me to be on their committees with them. I'm feel really fortunate to see and learn from them as well. It's just wonderful.
Just welcome you into the neighborhood with
Oh yeah,
open
but
arms.
they're amazing people, and they're leaders, and they sometimes just need a little bit of other people saying you're a leader too, and and then you can put 1 + 1 + 1 together and come up with a much bigger outcome than just 2.
Right. I love that. One of the things I loved when we met our first time a few weeks ago is how you would walk around and pick up cigarette butts and whatever's on the ground. And I left that
Little
day.
things.
I left that day and I seen something and I'm like thinking of what you said. I grabbed it and she's like, you were like, what if Maxine's looking out the window?
I said she got to you.
But now I
great.
can't. Like it gives me like I get anxious if I leave. Like if like something's on the ground next to my car, I'll just grab it. And like if there's no trash can, I'll just keep it in my car and throw it away when I get back. And I keep saying the same quote: "How you do anything is how you do everything. How you do anything is how you do everything."
You'll hear that
That's
in every
exactly
episode.
true. It's exactly true. And thank you for doing that, because I think all of us doing it, the more people that see somebody picking up something that's on the floor that's not supposed to be there, putting it back on the table where it belongs, is just helps other people learn it, especially children who learn from their elders. And we have to set good example, but it's everybody, because I think I've driven by and see people throw a McDonald's cup out the window. I go
when
crazy.
I see people do
Like,
that.
I have to
I
stop
honk at them. I'm like,
I stop if I can. I stop my car and go get it, because I don't want them to do that to our city.
Yeah.
It's just not right. And if you're a visitor, what do you think? Because I remember the signs that said do not litter, fines up to $150 or whatever it was. I don't want to get arrested for throwing something out the window.
I don't want to get fined.
So it takes all of us. It's really a multiple effect of everybody chipping in and helping. And imagine as a teacher, this, that the example you set, they'll follow.
And it goes down.
Yeah.
It starts from like seeing you. They're like, why is Maxine doing that? But you're like, how you do anything is how you do everything.
If you do it when you're supposed to do it, it doesn't pile up either. Like it would be one thing to go through a whole big gigantic pile of trash and throw it away. But if you just pick up that cup or that straw or that cigarette butt that's there on the floor. And when we had the flood last week, lots of things got flown around, and it was just like, we just had to clean it up. You have to clean it up, and the sooner the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Do you want to touch on the Fox Clark Foundation, possibly?
Yeah, our family foundation, which was able to be possible because of the success of Build-A-Bear and my husband's business, New Space Closet Interiors, which he ended up being able to sell to his employees, which was great. We really we don't have children, so we can have a lot of to invest in other people's children and other organizations. And in our foundation, we aren't the typical foundation that grants money to, you write us a letter and we say, yeah, we'll support that. We try to do more things that are like work-oriented, meaning we'll do research for you. We'll help you organize those thoughts. We work on ecosystems in different places like child well-being or homelessness or criminal justice reform, and we learn a lot about it. And then you're able to see how many people we have working in these things and who's the right one to go to when you need some help. Our most wonderful program that we do is our blueprint4.com, which is started with our summer camps. We thought we knew that I knew my friends knew where to send their kids to summer camp, but I didn't know that all kids in St. Louis knew where to go to summer camp, and that there were so many that were with science or art or music or sports, and that were they in their neighborhoods. And so we gathered all this information and created a database and made it available to everyone for free, the camps for free, and also the parents to use it. And then eventually started awarding scholarships, because some of these camps are, pricey for a week.
Right.
Whether it's $100 or it's $200, that's a lot of money, especially if you have multiple children. And there's 10 weeks or so in the summer program. So what do you do all summer long? But there are a lot of wonderful programs in St. Louis. And then at the end of the summer, it didn't start this way, but now we do these end of the year summits, and we bring all the camp providers together, and we kind of trade ideas. We also give them the data that shows them where everybody was looking for camps in every single zip code in St. Louis and what was missing, so that next year they can think about restructuring and moving more camps to this particular area. Awesome. We also connect them with the schools, and because schools will open up their buildings for a minor fee, really, to have summer camp programs, and some school districts that are doing summer school because they want kids to catch up are using other programs to support that. So it is more like camp rather than like school, which is totally fun because much more experiential learning. And Girls Inc. is doing camps at different schools, and many, many organizations providing wonderful learning opportunities for children beyond what they would have had before. So that's a good thing that came out of COVID. So we do that, and we think that that's where it's very much about in putting in literacy into some of those summer programs. We encourage the camps to have some kind of reading during those programs. Also science, STEM, almost everything has something to do, especially in the summer when you're outdoors. How can you teach kids about their environment and get them interested in something that maybe they didn't know before? So we try to bring all those materials to those summer camps so that they have what it needs to be able to do that. And we have amazing, I think this summer we had well over 9,000 summer camps listed. That's a lot of camps in St. Louis, and that's not that many operators, but fewer operators operate multiple camps. Like I think St. Louis U has like 150 or 200 camps. COCA, the Challenger camp over in North St. Louis, right near UMSL, it's about space. I mean, it's such a viable topic now. And I went there and I was like really being on a spaceship. I mean, it's really cool. So there's so many opportunities for kids. And St. Louis, that's another thing, is St. Louis has all of these things that I don't think there's no blueprint in every city in America. This is the only place that this exists, where parents can really easily access and know about what's going on and enroll, click through and enroll. It's pretty an amazing system, and we keep making it better and better. Now we have programs that are at colleges for high school kids that are thinking about going to college. We also have Blueprint for STEM, which is after-school programs. And we also have Blueprint for Careers, which talks about middle skill careers and where you can go to get certification. So we've expanded it pretty dramatically. So that's kind of more, we're a working foundation versus just a granting foundation.
Right. That makes sense. And you're just working. And it's just like you said, you stay creative, you stay passionate, and you stay ears to the ground. Curious. Yeah. Yes. Curious. That's my superpower. Curiosity.
Curiosity. Yeah, Maxine, you're very connected to your roots, and you're a great influence on our city.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of the work. And what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur or just, curious children? And
well, I always say to curious children is to definitely ask questions. Never be afraid to ask a question. Sometimes it's intimidating. You're afraid you're going to ask a stupid question. There's no such thing. Yep. I think that teachers and adults should encourage children to ask questions. And if you can't answer it, say, well, let's go look it up in the library or in the encyclopedia or somewhere. Google, we can find out about it pretty easily. So that, and there's some, I'm sure, harder things that kids might ask that maybe not be always appropriate. But for the most part, they're going to ask you things you can answer or find the answer to. And I would always encourage that. The other is to get experience. Like, I think there's nothing better than that, selling those Girl Scout cookies and opening up that lemonade stand and working, earning your money for your baseball equipment or your hockey equipment, doing things that can get you the things that you want in life, because nothing is really handed to you. And even if you are in a family that's wealthy, you still, when you get out in life, you have to have some kind of skills to be able to traverse the world. So, and those are the fun things that families can do together that I think are, just the basic things. So, and then that goes all the way to when you have an idea and you say, I want to open up a restaurant. Well, go work in a restaurant. It's not going to be your life's work. You're going to own that restaurant someday, but go learn how they do it and try to work in the best restaurant that you've ever heard of, and also then maybe go and work in a fast food restaurant and say, gee, this is how they do it. Maybe between the two, there's good systems in both that I could use. And now we're going to have this fabulous restaurant. And I think the really good restaurateurs that I've been to, they're very innovative. They've brought, all kinds of things together. But whether it's a clothing store, a restaurant, a media business, get experience and just show up for a job and they'll, and do it. And then say, now I'm ready to go out on my own. Now I know enough about it. Ask questions when you're there. People want you to ask questions. They want you to learn. They want you to grow. And I didn't intend to be an entrepreneur, but I was very entrepreneurial. And I think that's the other thing. Companies want people who think and dream and have ideas and say, oh, what if we did it this way? But if you never tell them that you have this idea that could do it better, and then when somebody does it, well, I told them I knew that we could do it a different way, but you never told anybody.
Right.
You didn't help the company, and you could have. Now they might have said to you, I don't think we can do that, but at least you put it out there on the table,
Right.
and then maybe they'll remember. Oh, you know what? John said that we could do that. We should have listened to John.
Circle back
Some
to
of the
it.
best employees are entrepreneurs, and
Oh,
they
yes.
work inside of a
Yes.
and you've seen them.
Most people don't want to go and start their own business. They don't want their headaches or the responsibilities
wanna
that
go
go with
home.
that. They just want to work hard and be successful and do what they love. And we have tons of those at Build-A-Bear, many at the Make Company. I was one of those. And people, encouraged my curiosity and my wanting to learn and made me a successful leader.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I think that just the only other thing we love to talk about is St. Louis. It's the STL bucket list show.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you have a few bucket list spots that you probably love in the city. If you just want to share like some of your favorite parks, some of your favorite maybe eats, some of your favorite, whatever.
Well, Forest Park is my favorite park. I mean, I don't know that. I've been to Central Park, but I don't think there's a park better in the world. I mean, we have the Muni Opera, we have tennis courts, we have the zoo. We have the art museum, we have the history museum. I mean, all in this one place. And it's all about the World's Fair, the 1904 World's Fair. And it's also right near our project. So I think like it's, where our projects look is Hollywood and Vine. Why would anybody want to live too far away from that incredible park? I mean, just unbelievable what you can learn there. Even if you're just going on, picking up leaves and looking at the different trees and studying that, I think that's really interesting too. I have visions of that at night when I go to the Muni in the summer and I'm going home and I think about, I guess the squirrels are going to have to wait till we all get out of here to kind of come alive and clean up the park.
Yeah.
And, the like sort of a Toy Story-ish
I
that
know.
the animals come alive at night. But I think that we have great restaurants here, all kinds of different entrepreneurial ventures. Like I went a couple weeks ago to Union Loafers in Tower Grove, and another restaurant there that's my favorite is Ellie and Olio, right there. I'm not really a Mediterranean food eater, but I had this salad there that was just so delicious. And now that some days I'll just crave it. I went, go get that fresh salad. The cucumbers and tomatoes and olive oil is so good. Yeah. So how bad can it be? But we have all these choices, and we need to be, lifting them all up and trying them and, making it as easy as possible which it is pretty, nothing's really very far away in St. Louis. And I think also I'd like to know about some of the wonderful things that are out further west. Yeah. What are the cute and kind of, community-oriented restaurants that the people in West County go to? Mm-hmm. Because I know the ones in the city, but I don't know all the ones that, take a trip.
Right.
Say, let's go on a restaurant, let's go to a new restaurant every month. Mm-hmm. There's so much opportunity there. Kirkwood and Maplewood and Webster have so many neat little, and they're all sort of historic buildings, So somebody had a restaurant there 100 years ago, and there's now a new restaurant there that's even better. So I think that's one of our strengths. And in food, you can actually learn a lot about cultures and different people's backgrounds and recipes. And I'm not even a cook. I don't cook at all, but I love to read the recipes and see what's in these things. Yeah. So that's, again, my superpower of curiosity. Mm-hmm. But I think St. Louis has so much going for it and the park is a great place for families. So there's even if one person wants to go to the art museum and nobody else does, you can go for a ride on the pond in the little boats, or you can go to the zoo. Like and say, we'll meet up in 2 hours. We'll meet here. You go your way, I'll go my way. And there's all kinds of transportation to get you wherever you need to go. So I think we're in one of the best places on the planet to live and to work and to play. Mm-hmm. And we should be lifting it up more, because I know some people told me, no, let's keep it a secret. We don't want more people to move here. But I think we could use a few more people.
Yes, we could.
We definitely could. And I like that outlook. And especially like you said, mentioned Forest Park, like that's your one of your biggest bucket list places, and it is free.
Best.
The art museum, the zoo is free. So there's a lot of things for a college student that goes to WashU, that goes to SLU, they can't really afford to spend, we go on a date, we spend $150 going out to eat to the place. You talked about Ben Perima's places. You're going to spend a lot when you go to those nice restaurants, and he's going to have a deli. We're going to plug his little, we're going to shout
Deli
them out.
DivIne.
Yeah, we're going to shout them out when they open. That's going to be really special.
We're excited about that.
It's amazing.
So. But I think that's the thing that brings people together is food, across nationalities, across neighborhoods, because people will go to a neighborhood for a really good restaurant that they never would have gone to before. And they go, oh, wow, I didn't know about this neighborhood. And his restaurants have done that in Tower Grove, and I think restaurants have done that all over the country. That where they create good food that people want to come back to again and again. But I also live in Clayton, and I love the Crossing. It's my favorite restaurant. I love the service. I love the people. I love the local owner. Jim Fiala. He's just great. And they just make you feel like you're the only person in the restaurant, which is really nice. Yeah. And even if during COVID, when you couldn't go into restaurants and you come back, they're so happy to see you. It's just really nice. So I think that there's I had a favorite restaurant that recently closed, Katerina's, which was a little Greek restaurant in Clayton. It was just wonderful. Always happy to see you when you come in for lunch. But I think that some restaurants just weren't able to survive this long hiatus of enough people coming to keep things going.
Or had to shift the way they do things.
Yeah, and they were just wonderful, great food. I miss them. But and also the servers. That's also who makes a restaurant. And sometimes you forget about that. You think it's just the food, but it's that person who has got that smile on their face that makes you feel like you're really welcome, and that actually is the reason you want to come back and sit at their table. Yeah. And I think we don't appreciate them enough either, because they are. They could be a person in medical school working as a waiter, as a second job or a third job just to make it through, and you have no idea that who they are. And I think that that's the part in that whether it's a grocery store person or anybody in the service industries, we've been like teachers, not necessarily treating them as special as we should be, because they do a lot of work that we couldn't even think of doing.
Mm-hmm. I think of that all the time. Like, I just see people doing jobs that, like, I've done some difficult jobs, but most of the time I've had pretty nice paying jobs, and like I've done like a little labor, and I like look at these guys, I'm like, man, I'm just like so grateful that like for every person in this ecosystem that does, somebody's got to do these jobs.
Yes, exactly. And we have a lot of opportunities here in St. Louis for more people to come and do these jobs. Mm-hmm. But it's not just a start. It's one way you get to the next place, and then you need new people coming in and doing those jobs again, new generation. A lot of high school students work in fast food and restaurants and ice cream parlors, and the next group of high school students will come and do that. It's a great experience. And all of us, when I was growing up, this is one thing that is different. It was really hard for teenage girls to get a job. Teenage boys could get a job, but teenage girls had a harder time.
Really?
Yeah, it was at McDonald's. There were only men that worked at McDonald's, or boys. Yeah, it was strange. Now it's, fortunately things have changed, but you can get a job doing everything. And when the younger you are, the more you learn, and you realize that's not for me. I'm not going to do that when I necessarily grow up, because I want to own the restaurant. Yeah. And I'm going to treat the servers better, and I'm going to make different kind of food. Whatever it is, you get these ideas in your head. And you may not do them, but you just might.
Yeah. And just stay curious. I think that might be the episode name. Stay curious.
I know, I was going to say.
Yeah, definitely. Maxine, keep your kid think.
Curiosity.
Yeah, we always like to come up. We always think so hard about the name, because we're like, it has to be perfect. And we're probably the only ones that really care about it.
Curious, passionate, and a divine leader.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Marissa.
Boom.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Done. So that's super special. And Maxine, thank you so much for coming in. I mean,
it's a pleasure to
I
be
wish
with
we
you
could have
again.
had more time, but I know you have.
We'll get together again.
Yeah,
just for fun.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, we will. Maybe go to the Crossing or something for dinner.
Yeah,
so.
we'll meet you there.
But it's special. Yeah, if you guys want to learn more about Maxine, we'll get with you and get some links that we can share for them, or any way that they can support. But really just take this episode, listen to it, and try to put some of these things. Go thank a teacher today. Go thank the person that might be cleaning the bathroom when you leave. Whatever it is, just be grateful, and be kind, and be curious. So we'll see you guys next week. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.